My name is Wilkinson Saldaña. I am a social science and geospatial data librarian at Cornell. Thank you for folks who are hosting us and putting this together, and for all my colleagues here. I feel like I've already, I was adding extra things to this after the first session of presentations, which is great. But yeah, so my project is about open data portals for cities, and it's specifically about teaching, using critical practice to work with these, which I'll talk about. But exploring, visualizing, and challenging is kind of the framework I came to. I guess just quickly, do folks here use city open data portals like in their? Okay, cool, yeah. And can I just ask just quickly, like, when would you send someone to a city open data portal?
I would never send someone without having a chat.
Ooh, yay! Start talking to you beforehand, yeah.
If their geographic scope is really clearly the same as the city or smaller than?
Yeah, okay, yeah, so spatial issues, context, critical, I'm sure we all have to think about this when we send people to resources, but this is great, because this is exactly what I'm trying to grapple with. Oh, it's so fuzzy, I'm sorry. But what I found, someone who refers folks to data sets, tries to help people answer questions about space, city open data portals have these fascinating collections of data. They're often close to what people are looking for technically, or in terms of scope of data, but there's all kinds of assumptions baked in that are a little bit hard to tease out sometimes. So here's, for example, the Detroit City Open Data Portal, and these are the most accessed data sets. And you can see that there's this heavy emphasis on demolitions and building, kind of this particular set of things. And if you think about Detroit, you think about narratives of who is shaping such a portal. Is this you couldn't just pluck this and say this is representative of all the data about the city, right? This is one set of maybe perspectives, but how do you get there with a learner? So what I found is that there's a couple tools out there. The Sunlight Foundation does this annual census of experts in civic data, so they try to show how complete the portals are. This is this big old census. I recommend you check it out if you're curious. But there's also this on-the-ground organizing happening. Has anyone heard of our data bodies? And Data-Driven Detroit, Allied Media Conference. There are all these folks who are trying to meet with community members, specifically folks who would be affected because of the way they're being surveilled. They're maybe excluded from conversations. And there's a lot of kind of community activist styles of organizing and collecting information. So, this is mapping community-based knowledge with postcards and string. And so what I kind of came to as a guiding question is okay, so if you want to teach these skills critically, and I really appreciate how McGinn mentioned this earlier, and other folks have just, we want to get those critical ethical frameworks going kind of soon and often, but how do you actually incorporate that into teaching the skills of getting data? And then how do you specifically help encourage people to look at power, exclusion, representation? So what I came to is, so this is something I've done. This is not the best visualization, but okay. So if you can move up a level from the individual data set to what's represented in the portal broadly, how do you? This is one little in, but how do you do more of it? So I decided to focus on creating a book down text. Have any of you seen or used these before? So this is just an open source online text. I want to create kind of a critical tutorial, tutorials that can help people use open data portals. So here's how you visualize a data set. Here's how you correlate it with other spatial data. But to do so in a way that is sort of critical from the beginning. Also, I really like the RStats community and the practices of collaboration there. And so Bookdown is really neat because it's based on a GitHub repository. You can invite collaborators. And I'm just interested in this idea of how do you create a tutorial chunk that can succeed in giving, let's say, an undergraduate the tools to start to learn R, but also be critical, but also help them with an assignment. So I phrase it all because I don't think it's always going to be successful, but I've heard echoes in what you've all said of this, is a one-shot the right tool? Is an in-class the right tool? So, and then I want to really get at, okay, so how do you show what's there? How do you incorporate specifically the community activist perspectives? How do you talk about the types of issues that folks are really have already identified as meaningful? So there's not just surveillance in terms of how we might generally conceive of privacy, but there's financial, predatory action. People's, there's in our data body they talk about credit scores. They talk about all kinds of aspects of data and collection that we might not see in this data portal, but we want to kind of frame things differently. So big old set of questions, but I'm excited to dig into it. So thank you.